much urban land increased in the years 1992 and 2001 in Minnesota?
No, Zach, how much?
According to Environmental and Resource Economics team, urban land grew by 2.6% in those years.
It's a pretty significant increase.
Now, do you know how many bodies of water were infested with invasive species in the year 2015?
Was it 820?
Yes, according to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. 2015 annual report, 59 were newly added to this list. Decrease in public hunting land and quality fishing lakes is becoming a problem that we need to face together. The outdoors is a big part of North Dakota and Minnesota's way of life, and we need to work together to stop using hunting land and fishing lakes. Today, Nick and I are going to be talking about the decrease in public hunting land and fishing lakes and what are causing these, like logging, decrease in farmland, how invasive species and water quality are affecting our lakes, and some solutions to help stop this. So Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about the decrease in public hunting land?
Well, the amount of public hunting land in Minnesota is decreasing due to several factors. The two I'll be talking about today are the increase in logging and the decrease in farmland. First, I'll talk about logging. According to the Wildlife Society's journal in 2000, annual commercial logging and clear cutting for timber harvesting has more than doubled since 1975. This has left huge gaps in mature forests, leaving fewer areas suitable enough to sustain vast amounts of wildlife. Building off that, the paper and wood products industry was ranked 4th in Minnesota in 1994, according to James McLaren from the Pulp and Paper. This has continued to be a problem, and it's still a dominant industry in northern Minnesota. Now you're probably wondering how this affects you. Well, not only does it diminish the amount of land in Minnesota for hunting, but it affects air quality, temperature control, and even water levels. Forests can give us crisp, clean air, they provide shade on hot days, and can even help slow the process of evaporation. In order for you to be able to utilize all these benefits, awareness needs to increase, and you could help by simply planting a few new trees every year. My next point will be about the decrease in farmland. The amount of cropland and grassland in Minnesota has dropped from 54.2% in 1973 to 39.1% in 2003, according to the International Journal of Remote Sensing's article in 2008. A lot is being converted to large-scale factory farms. These factory farms take over space for traditional farmland that lots of animals benefit from in the forms of food and shelter. Some commercial farms do utilize the natural elements of the land, but have such heavy traffic going through at all times of the day that they scare animals away to different areas. Without this farmland, people could start to lose recreational activities like hunting and even some popular fall activities like corn mazes. You can help by simply supporting local farmers markets and by buying more locally produced food rather than commercially produced food. The decrease in hunting land isn't the only problem in Minnesota. Zach, would you mind explaining how lake quality is decreasing in Minnesota?
Some of the ways that decreasing lakes are being produced in Minnesota is because of invasive species and the water quality. My first main point is I'm going to talk about invasive species and how they have big impacts on our lakes. Some of these invasive species include zebra mussels, common carp, round goby, and sea lamprey. Zebra mussels have become a big problem around Minnesota. Their filter fleeting competes with the availability of microscopic organisms that play a key role in producing in lakes' ecological food web. Not only do they affect the food, but they have harmful effects on humans as well. They can increase the exposure to organic pollutants, and these contaminants can be passed up through the food. So if a fish eats the zebra mussels and are exposed, and we eat the fish, it further increases our risk of being exposed to these organic pollutants. And this is according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. There are ways that we can do to help stop the spread of invasive species. Some tips from the Minnesota DNR are: make sure to remove any vegetation from your boat, trailer, and equipment before leaving the lake. Also to drain your live wells and bilge with running tap water. And if any invasive species is found stuck to your boat, to clean it before putting it back in the water. Another way that Minnesota lakes are decreasing is because of the overall water quality. Some of the things that hurt the overall water quality are mercury, turpentine, and phosphorus. High turpentine due to suspended sediment can reduce light penetration and water transferity. According to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, this affects the aquatic community because fewer photosynthetic organisms are able to grow. Suspended sediments also impacts lakes by clogging zooplankton's feeding mechanism, choking filter feeding invertebrates, and damaging gills of fish. Phosphorus is a naturally occurring nutrient, and this is essential for terrestrial aquatic plant growth. But if these levels become too high, it creates algae blooms, and when these blooms die, it creates deadly low oxygen environment for fish. So Nick, would you say that this is becoming a big problem?
Yeah, not just for a few, but for many. The amount of hunting land and quality lakes in Minnesota will continue to decrease as commercial logging increases and farmland decreases, and as waters continue to become infested by invasive species and water quality decreases. Our hope today was to make you aware of some of the reasons behind the decrease in hunting land and quality lakes in Minnesota, and to ask you to do some of the little things, like recycle paper and other waste materials to help save forests, and by cleaning your boat off every time you leave the lake to make sure no invasive species can be transported to other areas. Not only does the decrease in hunting and quality lakes in Minnesota affect animals, hunters, and fishers, it affects us all, even the people of the Fargo-Moorhead area.